Here we go. You know what's going down, right? Like that.
All right, good afternoon, everyone. My name is DeMarco White, and I'm your Music Forward host today. For those of you joining us for the first time, Music Forward is a national nonprofit organization inside the House of Blues and Live Nation family, with a mission to transform young lives, inspire careers, and champion a more inclusive music industry. We provide artist development and career development programs to inspire the next generation of leaders and innovators. Our spring season is in full swing, including our 2021 scholarships for college students. So find out more at our links in our chat. We are excited to bring you another season of industry sessions where we connect our communities to the music industry to discuss careers and trends. We are kicking off the spring season with a month dedicating to knowing your worth, both personally and professionally. And what a better way to get started with today's topic, knowing your music rights. So let's get started. We're so excited to have today's professionals here to talk about knowing your music rights. And we encourage you all to chat and to use the Q&A boxes to network and get your questions answered. So without further ado, I want to bring out our guests onto stage. So Dae, Loretta, please join me out here on our virtual stage. Yeah. Woo!
Hello.
Hi, how are you?
I'm good.
Good. Dae, how are you doing?
I'm doing good. Thank you for having me.
Perfect. Yes, thank you for being here. So there's going to be a lot of just content and conversation and knowledge that we're going to be spitting out today. And so I know we want to get into that. But before we do, please introduce yourselves to our audience. Tell us a little bit about you, your role, and sort of the company that you're representing. Dae, we'll start with you.
Sure. My name is Dae Bogan. I'm the head of third-party partnerships at the Mechanical Licensing Collective. I'm also a professor at UCLA Fairfax School of Music, where I teach music industry entrepreneurship. And my work is primarily in helping music creators and publishers understand and execute on their rights. At the MLC, I'm leading our partnerships and helping us to integrate in the music industry through organizations, key ambassadors, software companies that help with music rights and metadata management. But outside of that, I work closely with up-and-coming creators to help them understand that the music they create gives them entitlements, and to understand what those entitlements mean and how to represent themselves and as their own advocates in the music industry of the United States.
Awesome. Thank you for being here. Loretta, same question to you. Please introduce yourself to our audience.
Hi, I'm Loretta Gadson, and I work at BMI. I've been there for a long time, and my job now is to curate relationships with publishers, and I work directly with songwriters and composers, and as I mentioned, music publishers. Being in my position, I get an opportunity to hear about a lot of the issues that young songwriters, people in different parts of their career, what are the challenges that they're facing, getting a lot of them started on how to work the BMI system. What is it going to do for them? And I also mentor college students every summer. I've been doing that for about 10 years. And what we do in that internship is teach them about the music industry and teach them about BMI.
Awesome. So let's sort of get into it and really just talking about sort of basics. And what I'm most curious about before we talk about actually sort of music rights from the artist lens and sort of the benefits of getting into it and knowing them is your individual careers. And so Dae, share with us a little bit how you ended up at the MLC, and if this has been your life's mission and passion, and you thought you would be working in this sync licensing space as a college student.
Absolutely not. How I got to become the head of third-party partnership at the MLC, it all began really as a kid, being interested in music. I was raised as a vocalist. Eventually, in my tweens and teens, I knew that I wanted to be an artist and pursue that any way I could. Eventually, I'm from Cleveland, Ohio. So eventually I moved to Los Angeles when I was 18 years old as an aspiring musician. I always I also had a interest in business and marketing, and sort of balance that interest in the entertainment industry through a number of different pathways. Ultimately, I went to UCLA, where I studied sociology and communication studies. And then I got my master's at CSUN, Cal State Northridge, in music industry administration. While sort of pursuing the music industry, I also ended up helping a lot of my friends who are also young aspiring artists, helping them understand and navigate and think about the music industry, having had some exposure to it because my family's 3 generations of music industry. And I ended up starting an artist management company and a DJ management company and a songwriter management company, and then an independent label and a publishing company. And somehow I navigated into software and built a couple of software companies that help songwriters manage their copyrights and their publishing, and wrote research on the music licensing ecosystem when I was in grad school, and started investigating issues around music metadata and music rights and royalties, and published research, and somehow got into developing courses at Emerson College and UCLA, and teaching at other universities, and here I am. So, the goal was to be an artist, and now, I empower artists. I still work in the music industry, but I'm super passionate about what I do, and I've been able to kind of work in the music rights and artist empowerment sort of movement in different ways.
I have to say that I've known you for quite a while, and I've learned just right now 3 new facts that I didn't know. And so, 1, thanks for sharing, but 2, I'm kind of upset with myself that I'm just now learning these things. But it's also something that you mentioned too. It's not uncommon for artists to continue to pursue that as a pathway, but then learn that the business side is something that they also want to pursue too. So not to knock that out of the realm of things to pursue in their career, because they also both are possible at the same time. Loretta, tell us about sort of how you found your way into BMI, and has this always been the career goal that you set out to achieve?
No, it was not. I was looking for a job, and I was going to school at the same time. I've always been in business management. So when I got hired at BMI, it was on the business side, always. I wanted to know, how does this work? How does this work with BMI being in the middle, the songwriter and the licenses? And that was always my passion. Always had a passion for music. Mentoring young people was always at the top of my list. If someone called and they didn't understand how the ecosystem of the music industry worked, especially BMI, I was always gonna let them understand, you need to pay attention to how you're gonna make your money. So I just fell into it. And as I continued to work at BMI, I just decided I'm going to make this my career path. And I continued to go to school and continued to study business. And I have a master's in business administration. So that's always been my lane, and I never deviated from it. I cannot sing, and I cannot write a song. So I'm always going to be on the business side of the music industry.
There. Thank you for sharing that. It's something that I don't believe is spoken about enough, but like, we tell specifically college students to explore all internships, because it's equally as important to know what you want to do as it is what you don't want to do. But also just having those internships and always like be sort of intentional in the opportunities that you choose to explore, because they can form your pathway. And just like you were sharing now, Loretta, sort of how you got into BNI, you needed a job, and then you sort of saw a fit and decided to invest in that company as they invested in you. So thank you for sharing that information. I want to continue just with you, Loretta, and I want you to break down sort of what a PRO is, and then also if you can share not only sort of BMI, but also there's 2 other major PROs that I'd love for you to speak to as well.
Well, I can tell you a lot about BMI. BMI is a performing rights organization, and we license businesses that play music publicly, and we in turn are the bridge between the businesses that use music and the the creators of music. And we make sure that the songwriters get paid, and anyone that's using music to promote their business, and that would be live concerts, restaurants, television, cable, airplanes, theme parks, just to name a few. They have to pay for the music that they use, and in turn that turns into royalties for songwriters, composers, and music publishers.
Yes. Dae, do you want to share with us sort of the other PROs that are out there?
Sure. You know, ASCAP and BMI are the two largest PROs in the United States. They've been around for decades. I believe almost 100 years for BMI and a little over 100 years for ASCAP.
Yeah.
And CSAC is another major PRO that is private. And then there's GMR and All Tracks, which are primarily newer PROs, GMR being the last several years and All Track being the last just a couple of months, really. These are performing rights organizations have been around for almost as long as songs have been copyright protected in the United States. 1906 was the Copyright Act, and 1914 was ASCAP, and so PROs have been an important part of the legacy of songwriters for decades, and their estates and their grandchildren and so forth. So it's very important to have that kind of partnership in your career as a songwriter.
Cool. And then tell us also the difference between the MLC and a PRO.
Sure. So the MLC is not a PRO. So a PRO stands for a performing rights organization. Luckily for us, what we deal with is in our name. The Mechanical Licensing Collective specifically deals with mechanical licenses, whereas performing rights organizations deal with performing rights licenses or performing licenses. The Mechanical Licensing Collective, we're new. We were just born out of the recent update to the Copyright Act, which happened in 2018. The Music Modernization Act of 2018 established the need for a mechanical licensing collective, which went into effect. Effectively, we began the license that we can administer became available on January 1st this year. So what we do is collect the royalties, mechanical royalties, from digital service providers such as Spotify, Apple, Pandora, Amazon Music, Google Music, YouTube Music, so forth. We collect mechanical royalties, which sits on the other side of performing royalties. And then we pay those out to songwriters and publishers as well through, again, through the mechanical licensing process. So it's a little bit different process because we deal with what's called a compulsory license, meaning it's a license that a music user can, it's more of a grant of rights that a music user can acquire simply by following the obligations and the procedures of copyright law. Whereas with BMI, they're working directly with companies to make sure that companies are following the negotiated terms of licenses that they develop in concert with their board, their members, and so forth.
Perfect. Thank you so much. Loretta, where I want to spend this time talking about is sort of the journey of an artist and sort of what is that process? I'm an artist and I have a song and I'm ready to share this song with the world and it's out there. As somebody who's representing BMI, what is your advice? What is the first thing I should do?
So as an artist, are you also the songwriter?
Yes.
Okay, so as a songwriter and an artist, you have a double here, a double win. And what you would need to do is first affiliate with BMI. And you can do that on www.bmi.com and affiliate for free as a songwriter. The disconnect I found from my experience is once you affiliate with BMI, you have to maintain your catalog.
Okay.
Yes. And you would have to register each song and have the correct splits for each participant with the correct percentages. Um,
Can we, sorry, I want to pause here, and this may happen a lot throughout this conversation just because I know this is a heavy topic with a lot of new words for our audience. So I'm going to spend time breaking down every word. When you're all like, I do this for career, I know this, but for these purposes, I'm going to be sort of interjecting and breaking down. I want you to define sort of splits and sort of what have you seen being sort of the normalcy around percentages when it comes to splits for songwriting?
Well, what I can say is it's up to the individuals that create the music to come to negotiate what the splits are going to be.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes what I've learned from some of the creatives that I deal with is it's hard to have that conversation in the creative process, but it has to happen.
Mm-hmm.
Point you have to come to a determination of who's going to get what. And I'll use an example of a rap song. And it's one rapper, one producer. Usually, if there's only one rapper and one producer, no sample, they would split it 50-50. But that's not for me to determine. That's for the creators to determine how much of a percentage they would want to allocate to each individual that created that work. Usually the songwriter gets an equal portion for their publishing share. And with BMI, the writer's share equals 100% and the publishing share equals 100%. And they have to equal in order for that work to be processed. Now, it sounds a little complicated, but once you get the hang of it, that's going to be your key to getting paid. Once we have your work in your catalog, that's how we make the connection for the reports that we receive from music users. This music was used and this individual was entitled to get a 50% share of the money that was collected for that work. That's important. And that seems to be like a major breakdown for a lot of people. They don't register their work. They're waiting for someone else to do it. They look in their catalog. And I would stress, maintain your own catalog. And what I mean by that, you either register your own work or you continuously check in your catalog to make sure that whatever you've created, if you're waiting for someone else to register it, that it actually gets there.
Dae, I want to ask you because I'm always intrigued by just the support that different artists have. And so I know specifically on this call, a lot of our artists are emerging artists and independent artists who aren't really backed by a team or by a label. And there are some artists who are backed by a label and have what Loretta's talking about, where they have a team who is making sure that their song is registered, who's checking their catalog. In your opinion, Dae, if I'm an independent artist and I'm sort of doing everything on my own, which you once were, what is your advice? How should I be tracking my songs? How should I be tracking the usage? How do I look for my catalog in this World Wide Web that is so vast?
The first thing I recommend is that an independent artist who wants to take the music business seriously and not just a music hobby, take some time out and take a basic music copyright course. There's some available online. There's a number of articles and blog posts. I actually have a free ebook that I wrote for the Creative Future, which is a nonprofit advocacy group for music for creators of all types. But it's called the DIY Musician's Starter Guide to Being Your Own Label and Publisher. And it breaks down, it helps you understand what it means to be a writer versus a performer, so an artist, what it means to be a publisher versus a label. And then with those 4 different hats that you're wearing all simultaneously, how do you navigate the US music industry so that you're collecting your royalties? I think anyone who wants to take their music seriously and the business seriously needs to understand the fundamental framework of the music industry so that they know that BMI exists, they know that MLC exists, and that you have to establish a relationship with these organizations to be able to collect your royalties. So that's the first part, right? Something that it's not something that most music creators have exposure to in their early stages. It doesn't really come up until their music pops off, and then it's like, oh wait, there's something out there called royalties, or oh, there was a license that I didn't have for this sample that was in my song, and now someone else is coming after me now. Or I got a record deal offer, and I need to understand, what I'm signing up for, or a publishing deal offer. So just a basic, music copyright or music publishing course. That's my number one recommendation. Secondly, is kind of put some thought into where you would like your career to go. Not every artist wants to be signed to a major label or publisher. Some artists enjoy being completely independent. That means different things. That means different types of resources. It means different speed at which your music might be released. It might mean different types of strategies for generating traction around you as an artist and your music. So just kind of have a thought, think about some of the artists that you follow, and maybe do some research. Put a list of your top 10 artists that you really, really like, and then go figure out who's their label and who's their publisher. That might give you an indicator of the types of companies that you might want to be a part of. When I used to work with independent artists, I worked with a lot of independent artists who were, self-published artists or self-releasing artists, who weren't necessarily sure why. They couldn't tell me why they wanted a major deal, but they knew they wanted one, right? But it's important to kind of know that, because you have to understand what you're giving up in exchange for those deals. In terms of your independence and your ownership and copyrights and your control over your creative expression, all that stuff matters. And I'm not saying that either route is bad, because there are successful songwriters who are represented by major publishers and independent publishers, and there are successful songwriters who are self-published because they're our board members and our committee members at the MLC. There are different career paths for you as an artist, but you should take some time and kind of do those two things, get a basic understanding of music copyrights in the United States, and then just think about what kind of path you might want for the next 5 to 10 years. That could change, and it's okay for that to change. But if you have no goals whatsoever, it's hard to build a plan.
Fair.
Totally agree with that. Getting a basic knowledge would help you be more successful with collecting your royalties. And just to echo what Dae was saying, you could also create your own publishing company at BMI.
Talk to us more about that.
Oh, no problem. Just like as if you can sign up as a BMI songwriter or composer, you can also go online and sign up as a publisher. You would be an independent publisher. You could make your publishing company corporation, but you will still be the sole owner. You can get into a partnership. Partnerships have different laws. So it's best to read up on who has the authoritative rights on certain business decisions if you decide to go into a partnership. From my experience, I've seen a lot of bands start a partnership and open up a publishing company, and the band is no longer in existence. And one person is still collecting the royalties and still making all the business decisions, and no one else knows what's going on. Now, I'm not trying to say that's a bad thing, but just be aware of it.
And to be aware of, yeah.
So you can sign up as an independent publisher on BMI.com.
Yeah, what you both are touching on is definitely something I want to dive deeper into, which is really around the concept of agreements, right? You both mentioned agreements, licensing, contracts, and we know that sort of comes with the territory. And we always see these, what I'll call these 2020 stories of artists who have entered into an agreement and did not know what they were signing, and then they become sort of the Taylor Swifts or the JoJos of the industry because they didn't rather read the fine print, or they just were young and didn't know what was happening. And I don't want that to happen to people who are on this call today. So let's dive deeper into agreements. Loretta, when you and I were speaking this week, we talked about sort of just even licensing agreements like a DistroKid Presents. And so it's so easy that when you sign up for DistroKid, that it's like, do you agree to all this? No one's reading all that fine print. It's like, I agree, and you move forward. share with us, one, your opinion on the topic, but also bring light to just some of the things that are highlighted in those agreements that artists should be paying attention to, such as the payouts when it comes to domestic and international revenue streams.
What I can tell you is about an experience I had.
Yes, please share.
I
We
want
love
to.
stories here.
I'm next. I'm
Okay,
next.
great.
I've worked with a producer who went online and bought a beat and did not read the contract and signed up with BMI that he was the producer for a rap record that became very popular. And what he didn't realize that in that contract, he gave up all his performing rights. And so what that does is it presents a legal issue. And I say all of that to say, you have to read, no matter how excited you are to get to that next part, you have to read all the fine print, know what you're giving up, what you're signing up for, and are you entitled to register that work and collect performance royalties. You do not want to put yourself in a position to get sued. And that's when all the attorneys start calling me and saying, this person has no rights to this music. It gets a little sticky.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Dae, how about you?
Yeah, so I've seen many cases. So I used to manage songwriters and artists, but I also built software companies that songwriters and artists use to manage their catalog and to register their works to societies like BMI. So I've seen the splits, and I've seen writers claim ownership and stuff, including works that were created from samples or works that were created from leasing a beat or buying a beat. But I want to talk about a recent example that happened this year, actually last year, over the last several months. But there was an artist, like most artists, independent artists, who he had two main issues. One is he bought a beat, and he thought he bought the exclusive to the beat, and made the song and put it up on streaming services, and the song actually took off and started generating a lot of streams from him. It was a really well written song. It was really nicely done, but someone else claimed copyright infringement and had the song taken down off of the streaming services, which means during that time he had to, with his team, just handle a dispute on who owned the copyright in the works. And that took several months, which means during that time that that music was off of the streaming services and not generating income for him, and also affecting his play count. So that was one issue that had to be resolved, and it took lawyers and a manager and a lot of money to get that resolved. Second issue is it came back online, which is great. But then it would also continue to do well enough for a major label to offer a record deal based on that record, only for him to learn that the service that he's selected to upload his music through, the aggregator, had a clause within the terms of service that he agreed to that allows them to collect royalties on that distribution for 2 years from the date that he signed up, even though he had only been up for 9 months and he already got a record deal offer. So now he had to get out of the deal that he made by simply clicking, yes, I agree to terms of service, right? That was considered entering into an agreement with the aggregator. He had to either come up with a way for him to get this music back, because the label that he just signed to, he actually signed a label, needed to redistribute it under their name. But ultimately what happened is they had to buy out the future royalties. So pay in advance the distributor for the royalties that they would be missing out on by him moving the record from that distributor to the label, which was, the offer was 6 figures.
Yeah.
For an independent artist who was not making 6 figures. They extrapolated and calculated a future forecast of what it could make based on a couple of months of success. ultimately had to get the label involved and do a deal with the aggregator. So also at the end of the day, it was a mess that got figured out eventually, but it cost him a lot of time, a lot of headache, and a lot of money, because he didn't read the terms of service. He didn't know that by clicking yes, I agree to the terms of service, that I'm agreeing that regardless of how successful this piece of music becomes, for the next 2 years, you get this service to collect royalties on that distribution, regardless of what happens in the meantime. And it's about being aware that, and I tell this all the time to artists, any service that you sign up for that touches your money, you need to read the terms of service. You wouldn't go into a recording contract or a publishing deal without reviewing the contract or having a lawyer review the contract or a manager review the contract. You shouldn't sign up for an aggregator who's responsible for uploading your music to a service, to DSPs, to digital service providers. Like, you shouldn't sign up for anything that's going to touch your money without you reading the terms of that relationship. And that terms is spelled out in your terms of service on the website.
Yeah, there's a lot there. Go ahead, Loretta.
Read all of it. I mean, all the fine print.
Yeah.
All of it.
All of it, not just the first page and the last paragraph.
Right, fair. And there's also, I feel like that's just in life in general. It's just not in music rights anyway, but life in general. I think this is also important, though, just to go back to what you were mentioning earlier, Loretta, about split sheets and being in that room and how sometimes it can be awkward, but it's not just those verbal agreements that you should be making. You should be writing down every agreement, and every iteration of it needs to be written down somewhere and signed by those who are agreeing to it. Because just as the story that Dae just shared, like, had there been something, well, this is sort of different, but had there been something in writing, if you're talking about writing a song or producing with the rapper that you were talking about, Loretta, had there been something written, it could be a whole different situation. So I just want to stress that point with our audience. I want to pivot a little bit because we're talking about sort of the different revenue streams for songwriters and artists when it comes to royalties and music rights. And something huge has just happened with the MLC specifically. And so, Dae, I want to cue you up to share this amazing news and what it means for the music industry and what it means for artists and songwriters.
Sure. So in 2018, Congress passed the Music Modernization Act after many years of negotiation between stakeholders that included performing rights organizations, record labels, publishers, digital service providers, advocacy organizations for songwriters, and so forth. So we passed the Music Modernization Act, and that made an update to the Copyright Act, including 3 parts. Title I, which is an update to how songs are licensed for digital service providers in the United States. And then Title II and Title III, which has to do with sound recordings, pre-1972 sound recordings, and with producers and engineers, we're not going to dive into. But one of the things that the service, that the legislation did was created a pathway for publishers and songwriters to have a streamlined method of receiving sort of unmatched or past due royalties associated with the usage of music that may not have been properly or attributed or correctly attributed due to a number of reasons. We call that the unmatched royalty. So, for example, if I write a song and I'm using a aggregator to upload my music to a DSP like Spotify or like Apple Music or like Amazon Music, and I have not registered my song with the types of companies that are and organizations responsible for matching those usage reports that Loretta talked about earlier to the song ownership information, so that they can then calculate and pay out royalties to the owners. If I have not done that part, registered the works, or someone hasn't done it for me, like a publishing administrator, then as far as the music industry ecosystem is concerned, the song doesn't exist because there's no record of its existence. If it hasn't been registered with the Copyright Office and it hasn't been registered with a society of different types, then the song doesn't exist from an administrative record keeping standpoint. It may technically exist because it's in the music and it's on a service, but it hasn't been registered, right? It's like, for example, if I give artists this example all the time. If I have a 9-to-5 job and I have to clock in and clock out, and I go to work every single day for 40 hours a week, but I never clock in and clock out, I can't get paid for those hours I worked because I never, there's no record that I actually worked, right? So when you're creating music, we have to have records in the music industry that the music exists so that we can match up the earnings against that music to who should be paid out for that music. So anyways, for many years and for lots of different reasons, the industry as a whole has been accruing unmatched earnings. And now the MLC, our organization, is responsible for receiving this historical unmatched data from digital service providers who are using or operating under the new blanket mechanical license. So we just announced on our website that amount, which is over $424 million, and that we are obligated under the statute, the Music Modernization Act, to match that historical data to the copyright owners, and then therefore pay that out for the purpose of paying that out. So that's going to be a process. We need the help of the songwriters and publishers who need to join the MLC, just like they must join VMI. You can join us for free. As a songwriter, you can use, if you have a publishing company that you set up with VMI, you can use that same publishing company to join the MLC. And to use the IPI number that BMI assigns to you as a publisher, and set up an account and start registering the same songs that you register with BMI. You register the same songs for MLC. Every time you write a song, you go to your BMI account, you register it. You go to MLC account, you register it. So when we receive reports about the use of that music from digital service providers, BMI pays out one type of royalty called performance royalty. We pay out the mechanical royalty. So as a songwriter, you're getting your full royalty profile from your two organizations, your MLC and from your PRO. Now there's other types of royalties out there I'm not going to dive into, but I do want to say that because we're recording. But in regards to MLC, we're paying out the mechanical license royalties, and you have to sign up. But yes, those back royalties or unmatched, historical unmatched data was a big news. It was big news. It's on our website. You can go to the MLC.com and learn more about the historical unmatched data.
Yeah. So go ahead, Loretta.
There's one piece of information that Dae mentioned that I want to kind of hone in on.
Yeah.
An IPI, the IPI number is critical. It's a universal identification number to an individual and to your music publishing company. And you should always know that number so you will not get mixed up with another person. I'm just speaking from experience that.
Absolutely. So in the music industry, there are different types of music codes. And these codes are unique identifiers to identify parties and assets and contributions surrounding a piece of music. So if me, Loretta, and yourself all co-wrote a song, we're going to have a unique identifier for our name called an IPI number, interested party identifier. And then I might have a publishing company, and that publishing company will have its own unique identifier as well. But the song that we all wrote on will have its own unique identifier as well, called an ISWC code, or ISWC, International Standard Work Code. So these are identifiers that's used in the publishing industry so that we can make more efficient the process of identifying and disambiguating people and assets for the purpose of allocating, for the purpose of attribution, and then ultimately allocating royalties. So you need to know when you join BMI, what is your BMI member number and what is your IPI number?
It's important.
I want to take a question from our audience, and I feel like Dae, you might have answered a little bit of this in talking about just the new news on what's happening with the MLC and paying out these songwriters and artists. But Jen Martinez asked, really around is it possible to collect retroactive royalties? So if she has a song and had it on SoundCloud or Bandcamp or whatever it might be, one of these free platforms, and it got played at a concert, but she hadn't registered it with a PRO or with an MLC, is it possible to go back and sort of ask for those funds?
For most organizations, you can collect retroactively. There's going to be a difference in how far back you can go based on a number of factors. The type of use, the actual company that paid out the royalties in the first place. For example, in the film and TV world, you may not be able to go back as far as you can for a digital service provider. Or a game. So there's different statutes of limitation on how far back you can go for all types of royalties, not only on the publishing side, but also on the sound recording side. You have sound exchange, for example. So for the MLC, we just launched, right? So our license just became available January 1st, and we will be paying out royalties on a monthly basis beginning April. So for those who have been earning streams on interactive services like Spotify and Apple Music and Pandora and so forth, starting January 1st this year going forward, most of those royalties will flow through the Mechanical Licensing Collective starting April. Now, in regards to everything that happened prior to January 1st, 2021, that is what the big historical unmatched royalties announcement was about, which I posted in the chat, by the way, so everyone can click on the link and
thank you.
Go to that later. But that's the details about that. You can go read up on that.
Yeah.
I can tell you in regards to a PRO, it's in the contract. We're only going back 3 quarters.
Oh.
So again, that goes to reading what you're signing up for. One of the things that's also in the contract is that it's the songwriter's responsibility to stay on top of what they're collecting, what they're not collecting, or if you have a publisher who makes the business decisions, they're supposed to also keep on top of what you're collecting. So it's best to know what you're collecting and what time period. We have a 9-month lag on when we when we pay out royalties to the time that we actually get in the information. So if you're not paying attention to your catalog and what you're getting paid for, you're only subject to getting 3 quarters of back pay.
Right. So I think that's a great point to make, because sometimes artists don't know when they're receiving payment. You just look at your statements, it tells you from what period that payment comes from, right? So if I had a song that was released in January, then 9 months later is when this is what Loretta's saying, that you will start to receive payments if you earned eligible activity in January. For the MLC, we have a 75-day gap. So if you were in January, then it's April. So that's a little bit faster, and then it's a monthly basis. So February would then be May, and then March would be June. So it's a monthly basis with a 75-day gap.
Yeah. I love that. You are sharing so many great things today, and Jen says thank you to you both for answering her question in our chat. I want to take some questions from our audience, and we've been getting a lot in our Q&A, and we also have some of our youth participants who are going to come on screen and ask you some questions directly. And so our first participant is going to be Jackie, who is attending USC and is eager to ask you all a question related to today's topic. So I'm going to bring Jackie out to the stage and let them do what they do. Hi, Jackie, how are you?
Hi, doing good. How about yourself?
Doing very well. Go ahead and ask your question. First, introduce yourself, and then go ahead and ask your question to our panelists today.
Yes, thank you. Hi, my name is Jackie. I'm currently a student at USC, and I have an interest in the music industry. So my question for you all is, what resources would you recommend to someone new in the industry who is looking to learn more about music rights and its complexity?
I'll go first because I know Dae has a lot to tell you. I would suggest getting some books. There's a book called This Business of Music. I hope I'm quoting that correctly. Um, Interesting information. I think if you learn the basics first, you will be able to understand what role you want to play in the music industry. I would also suggest that you attend panels and seminars so you can learn a lot about the different roles, the challenges, real-time information about the music industry. And I think you get more of a hands-on feel of what's going on. Day.
No, I absolutely agree. One of the very popular books and music industry courses, music business courses, is the All You Need to Know About the Music Business by Donald Passman. This has been taught at universities across the country, at undergrad and grad level, graduate level. It's sort of one of the sort of music industry Bibles, in the sense that it gives you this broad foundation. And so that's one in terms of a broad foundation. Obviously, I'm going to go ahead and plug my ebook again because it's a quick read. I made it for easy digestion. It's under 18 pages of actual reading, and it's a checklist. So it's more of a, here's what it means for you to be a creator, and here's the organizations you need to join as a creator in the United States. So it's more of a checklist, and I also give you some examples of how it works when you're collaborating with people who are self-published or who have a publisher, like what those splits might look like. So it's more of a short read, but it's very fundamental. There are tons of these type of webinars, especially now more than ever. So be on the lookout for webinars. If you follow me on social media, I speak pretty frequently. So I'm sort of one resource of finding webinars, but there's many more than the ones that I participate on. And there are some groups on, I think there's some really important groups on Facebook and LinkedIn that I tell my students at UCLA to join, because in those groups you can ask questions like this to people who are music industry professionals, but also people who are also emerging in the music industry and want to know about things such as internships or job opportunities, entry-level job opportunities for new grads, scholarships. Music Business Association, House of Blues Music Forward Foundation has several scholarships. So there's scholarships, there's internships, there's entry-level jobs, there's online webinars, there's workshops, there's thought leaders who have social media accounts who are very active. So all of that is going on right now.
Thank you both. Thank you, Jackie.
Thank you.
No problem. I want to bring out our next participant, Starlin, who will introduce themselves, but also another great youth participant at Music Forward, looking to get their career started in the music industry. So Starlin.
How's
Hey,
it
so
going?
how are you? Hey, how are you?
How are you?
Doing very well. Introduce yourself and then also your question for our panelists.
Sure. Thank you for having me. My name is Starlin. I am a student at Providence College. I'm coming from Providence, Rhode Island right now, and I'm a musician and filmmaker from the Boston area. My question for both of you is, what is the most challenging part of your job, and why do you find your job important despite all the challenges that come with it, this industry?
Loretta, let's start with you.
Yes. The most challenging part of it is dealing with disputes. There's many challenges, let's say that. Just thinking about my day today, dealing with disputes and trying to get the songwriters and composers to understand their rights and how to avoid disputes. Mainly because of most of the disputes start with copyright infringement, using someone else's work without their permission. If those things could be avoided, you would probably have a better experience in the music industry, just know what you can use. Do not use other people's work without their permission. Know what copyright infringement is, and you know, process your music from a genuine basis. Know that you have to give credit to everyone that's a part of that project. That's one challenge.
Hey, how about you? One challenge.
I don't know. I mean, I'm not gonna say my job is easy, but it's literally my role was created based on my background, which makes me really passionate about what I do, and I enjoy what I do. So the challenges seem more like welcome parts of of what I do. That being said, my role is head of the third-party partnerships, which is uniquely a role that requires a lot of networking. And my personality, as you know, is enjoy being very social and networking. So this pandemic right now is probably the most challenging part of my role, because I can't be at the conferences, being face-to-face with colleagues who you're normally, use conference as a way to kind of break bread with people who you've been emailing every day and be on the phone with every day. Being that my role is to establish relationships on behalf of the MLC, to do that virtually is a challenge. Now everyone's dealing with that as well, but the MLC is an organization that was formed during the pandemic, whereas everyone kind of transitioned into it. So I've never even met my coworkers because we've never worked together. We were all hired during the pandemic. So that's the most challenging part.
Interesting.
Thank you both for sharing. Starlin, thank you for being here today. Everyone's trying to find the unmute button. I feel your pain. Thank you both for sharing. We're gonna take. I want to bring on Phoebe, who is our social media producer extraordinaire, but also will be asking questions based off of some questions that we got from our social media platform. So Phoebe, go ahead and come on out, and let's do this.
Hi. So yeah, as you said, I'm Phoebe. I am the social producer for Industry Sessions. And I was wondering, when you're approached about the usage rights for your music, whether it's for like a film or a commercial or something, how do you like appraise your music and decide what you should be asking for in terms of money and all of those things?
Well, I actually recently helped an artist during the pandemic last year, who was an independent artist who did a guitar cover of a popular song, and an ad agency reached out to him to use it in a T-Mobile commercial. And he was a student and never put out music professionally. It was a YouTube video of him, and it was the first time he had that kind of approach. So like he wondered, like, what do I say? How much do I charge? It's first of all, in these books that we mentioned, The Business of Music and Donald Passon books, they actually do a great job of giving you some ranges based on industry customs. Now, it is based mostly on major label music or major publisher music, but they do help kind of give you some ranges of like, this is how much something would cost or be paid for in a film if it's an independent record versus if it's Rihanna. So there are some guidelines. That being said, there are a lot of companies out there that help with sync for film and TV, and they can help with some of that structure. They do have a fee or some kind of a commission structure, but it helps because not only are they helping with the pricing, but there's also the contract terms that you may not know what to put in there. What happens if I come to you and say, hey, I'm an independent filmmaker and I'd love to put your music in my film, and I give $200? Like, okay, great. And then it goes to Sundance, and then it gets picked up by Paramount, and then it gets distributed around the world, and you never get any more money, right? Your contract needs to say that, okay, well, if it gets this big, then I need more money. And if it gets this big and the box office sales become this, I need more money. You won't know that unless you have a lawyer or an experienced artist manager or some kind of service that knows that these are the terms that would normally go in those type of deals.
Right.
What do you have next for us, Phoebe?
Yeah, so I have one final bonus question, which is I was wondering if you had any fun behind the scenes stories and if you got to like work directly with any well-known artists or labels, any stories there.
Loretta, let's start with you.
Oh yeah, I I'm fortunately during my career, and I think this is what got me super interested in staying forever. I was able to be a part of the production crew for the R&B and Hip Hop Awards. So I would work on the red carpet and meet all the stars and all the songwriters. Um, a lot of people love being on the red carpet. So that's a exciting part of working in my industry and listening to their personal stories. Sometimes we would actually go to dinner together with some of these songwriters and uh, producers, and seeing them in their natural element. It's exciting. They're just regular people. So I never had the groupie thing in me. So just
Yeah.
hanging out with people and just being yourself and having a good time. That's an excellent part of my job. I love it.
Yeah, I agree. I came out here as an aspiring artist, but pretty quickly, sort of in my early 20s, shifted towards the business side, which I've been in for the last several years. But yeah, I've had exposure to a number of emerging and established artists. I've had different roles in and around the music industry. I previously worked in retail and as a head of marketing and strategy, and through that I did some partnerships, more brand partnerships, or around merchandise and tours and sponsorships, and that was a different perspective of artists as brands, not just their music, but their brands being on sneakers and T-shirts and so forth. So yeah, it's really cool to. I mean, I've been in the studio with artists, and like Loretta said, I mean, they're people, right? They at one point no one knew who they were, and they were writing music in their bedrooms, and eventually everyone knows who they are,
Yeah.
or they're on their way to that, but they still need that help. And you learn that a lot of artists are much more humble and insecure than you would think, based on their appearance in terms of social media, or how they show up in social media, which actually makes you like them more, because they become more real to you. And then also sometimes you build friendships with people, and you're thinking like, well, I can't, I'm friends with such and such, and it may not be friends, but it's like I got their number and I can,
Yeah.
we hang out with each other. They actually know who I am. That's cool.
Yeah. Thanks, Phoebe.
Awesome, thank you.
Yeah. So we're approaching the end, and so I just want to let everyone know in the audience, because we got a lot of questions, and I'm sorry that we're not able to get to them, but hopefully this helps you all out. Is that we have tons of panels coming up and programming happening every week, and so engage in those, and maybe some of your questions will be answered through the content that we share. Dae, Loretta, thank you all so much for being here and just sharing this knowledge and making music rights fun, and sharing this knowledge in such an engaging and colorful way. And special shout out to our youth participants who came on to ask you these questions directly. But I want to say thank you, and I'm going to just move to close out our industry session. And so for our audience today, thank you all so much for showing up and for always supporting Music Forward. Next month, we're moving on to a new theme where we'll be talking about social media and PR, really around spreading the word. And so our next panel and session will be in March and focused on social media. Do not forget to fill out your survey at the end and check out everything Music Forward has to offer. We're doing a spotlight performance on Instagram next week. We have our office hours, which is career development and artist development series happening. So sign up for those on our websites. And as always, we have our open mics bi-weekly. So if you are an artist or performer who just now learned how to register their music and define their rights, please sign up for our open mic and get that artist development there. But for all of you here, our panelists, audience, Music Forward, thank you all so much for everything you do and for supporting the Music Forward mission. And until next time, please be safe and be well.